Okay, so we are on day two of our analysis of Mishlei 15:5. I had an idea on the way here, which I don't know why this never occurred to me, but what I did, usually I review what we did yesterday beforehand, and then I walk here and think about it. But what I decided to do is I just uploaded the notes into ChatGPT and then just talked with it and like just asked it to recap and compare and contrast the different interpretations to identify like which questions we didn't answer. And I thought that was a good use of that, because like even hearing it like from a different angle like can trigger different thoughts. It was also funny because the voice I use these days is like a soulful black guy, and he pronounces it as tochacha. So when we talked about Tochacha, so it was very amusing. So then I got that in my head.
Can it translate Hebrew? Like, what can it read Hebrew words?
Yeah, and it's funny because it gets them right sometimes and wrong other times. Sometimes it does like heavy on the like Israeli pronunciation, and then randomly it'll do like like ignoramus. Yeah, so it's funny.
Sorry, even in Hebrew it says tochacha? Like,
yeah, meaning like it'll like read the notes as a tochacha.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Evil Yinatz Mussar Aviv V'Shomer Tochachas Yarim. So a fool despises is the plain shot, rejects is also good, pushes aside is sadigon. We didn't actually say this. I don't know why we didn't say this. The discipline of his father. Okay, Mussar, I think most directly translates as discipline. It could also mean rebuke. The shomer tochachas yarim, but one who guards or watches or maintains or is careful with rebuke. Careful with, I think, was also was the targum. Will become cunning or clever. All right. So our questions were: what is the scenario? Is this describing a general state of things that he just across the board rejects his father's Mussar, or is it referring to a specific instance of Mussar? 2, what's the subject of the pasuk? 3, what is the chiddush beyond fools reject discipline and similar pasukim? 4, I forgot to look up what the similar pasuk is or whatever. Is the Avil only yinas the Mussar of his father? Based on what we know, it sounds like he doesn't like any Mussar, so why specify Mussar Aviv? 5, is the tochacha in the second half also specifically from the father, or is it just in the first half? 6, likewise, the tochacha in the second half, is it davka directed at him, or does it apply to all tochacha? 7, what does yinatz mean here? What beyond not heeding does this imply? 8, is this a definition of an avil or just a characteristic? 9, what is the definition of Mussar and tochacha in this context? Are they the same? 10, what is the consequence of the avil's rejection of Mussar Aviv? It doesn't say. 11, what does shomer mean in this context as opposed to mekabel or shomea? 12, how are these two opposites, especially if the tochacha and Mussar are different? 13, what is the meaning of orma in this context? 14, how does shmiras tochacha make a person arum? Is it quantitative or qualitative, meaning does it increase his orma or does it give him orma? Or does that even matter? Especially because we associate tochacha with pointing out a flaw. So you'd expect the effect of tochacha to be the removal of a flaw, not necessarily the upgrade to a positive quality. Alternatively, you'd expect the outcome to be in actions, not intelligence. 15, who's the intended audience? Is it the person receiving rebuke, the person giving rebuke, or something else? What kind of people are included and excluded from this audience? Okay, so we had a couple approaches. Ariel's approach was that it is focusing specifically on the Mussar Aviv and telling the father that if he wants to deliver a successful rebuke, then he needs to take into account the fact that a son has specific resistance to his father's rebuke, and he's going to have to be careful with it to deliver it in a way that is heard by the by his son, which means they can like bypass the resistances, and that might make the father arum in more than just that relationship. It might spread elsewhere because he's going to now take into account the psychological rebuke. Just as a side point, it always astonishes me like how it feels like a basic mistake that people will deliver a rebuke and just not even think about the psychological stuff. Like they think that just the message itself somehow like will get across. Like it just. I don't know. It's like I'd like to think a little bit more about why people make that mistake. Yeah.
Maybe it's because they're doing it for their psyche and not because
that is definitely a possibility. Yeah, right. Apparently when I was very young, no, not very young, I guess a teenager, I think my mom was saying some sort of like rebuke to, or not rebuke, but like whatever, like saying something to my brother, and apparently I said like, are you saying this for you or are you saying this for him? And she always quotes that because she said it like it was the first time she was aware that there was like a possibility that like she was really just saying it for herself, and so I think that is a easy trap to fall into. Yeah. Okay. What?
It was like yesterday with a conversation about the parent.
Yeah, right.
So-
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good example, right? Very good example. All right. Okay, the Ezra's idea was that the pasuk is addressing a third party and telling them about the Avil who rejects his father's Mussar and saying you got to watch out when you're interacting with that person because that indicates something about how they are outside of this rebuke, right? And if you know that someone accepts rebuke, you should think about the fact that they might be doing it as an arum, not as a chacham or a navon, and that there's cunning behind this. And my critique was it didn't quite fit with he will become cunning. It did fit with the Targum saying arum hu, but not with he will become cunning. David's approach was that that there's basically two approaches to receiving tochacha that you don't like. The meaning that you don't like hearing. You could either act like an avil and reject it, or you can hold on to it, then let the emotions pass by, and then extract the chachma from it, which is a good mechanism for dealing with it. And it's nice in between because you definitely need to feel like there is an approach, like the avil is not actually feeling his feelings. The feelings hit him, and then he just shuts off his mind and then ignores it. But holding on to it is acknowledging that these feelings will pass, and then I'll be able to see things in a clearer way. Sometimes what that might mean practically is you should sleep on it, right? Take the rebuke, feel all angry about it today, sleep on it, and then the next day come back and like look at it without that immediate feeling. Then we asked why yarim as opposed to yechkam. So we said that if you will, in addition to getting the knowledge from the content of the tochacha, you'll also gain self-knowledge about your emotions. Moshe Koppel said, Mussar Aviv is a tochacha that awakens an emotional response because of the relationship, and you could do three things. You could either take it personally, regardless of how personal it was, or you can acknowledge it, heed it, and move on, or the arum, though, will hear it, think about it, and use it in other ways and extract as much as possible from it. So that when I was reviewing that, it reminded me of that my favorite, the only Eleanor Roosevelt quote that I know.
Three people?
Three people. Let's see if that does it. No, let's just do three. I know average minds, right? I think that's the great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people, right? So the avil takes this personally, as you're just criticizing me, the unmentioned person in the pasuk takes this as an event, like I was doing something wrong and you're telling me about it, so I got to correct that. But then the great mind will take the tochacha and treat it as a manifestation of an idea or insight, and then that will lead to more insight. I feel like there's something psychologically deeper here that this is very, very universal. Okay, and then we had some half approaches. Yeah.
Did we go through it already?
Which one? Say again?
Ariel's bottom approach?
Oh, Ariel's bottom. Yeah, we did that already. Yeah. Oh, we didn't go through my approach. My approach was that there's two levels to get tocha. I mean, it kind of overlap with David's, but that the avil ignores the content of the tochacha and does not seize the opportunity for self-knowledge and asks himself, like, why am I reacting this harshly to what my father said, and like thinking into that. Whereas the shomer tochachas will take the content and then also use it for orma, for self-knowledge of his emotions. Okay. Any other ideas or approaches before we go to the meforshim?
Yeah, I was starting off an idea yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if it's not fully thought out, but it's just more like if an avil pushes aside.
Yeah.
Mussar Aviv, maybe he's just saying that, like, it's not like he's rejecting it. It's just like pushing it aside. I mean, look, it doesn't apply to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's kind of like the other arum, not the positive arum, but like the negative arum.
So one thing that brings to my mind is I do think there is a move someone makes where they tell themselves that they are setting aside the rebuke and that they'll come back to it later, like just pushing it aside, but really they are responding to the newts, like they're rejecting it, so like it's a trick that you can use to like make it you could pat yourself on the back because you're saying that you're being makabel it, but you're really just pushing it aside.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I don't know. Maybe the chiddush of the pasuk is that look, sometimes it's possible that when people give you a rebuke, there's nothing tangible to the rebuke. There are times like that. Like I just whatever. Like the point is, like the question is maybe speaking to the individual who is receiving the rebuke is to determine. Is how do you determine whether this rebuke is yours or not? It's for you specifically. Yeah.
So you're saying it's a good thing?
No, I'm saying that like like if you really think it's not yours, then it's not for you, then push it aside, but don't let it, you should still be aware of it.
Okay, so maybe that is the Yedache and Shomer, right? Meaning in both cases, you're not applying it to yourself now, but in one case, the pushing it aside for later is just a ruse that you're using to like ignore it. And in other cases, you are saving it. So if you actually are saving it, then you should, I guess, practically speaking, you have to come up with some way to like retrieve it and to consider it at a different time. Yeah, we're gonna say Ezra?
I was gonna say that.
Okay, nice. Very good. Yeah, that's a good approach. Yeah, David?
Yeah, I'm just thinking one other approach also. Insofar as the second half talking to a totally outside audience, not the person who's actually getting the rebuke.
Yeah.
And it's saying that rebuke is something that can be dealt in like a very direct personal thing, but I think rebuke is just like a generalized chokhmah to someone who made a mistake, and there are ways that you can not do that mistake. I think it's saying that then someone who watches the rebuke of others even before he himself makes that mistake, guards and thinks about it, so that if he were to ever come into this position that the person who just made a mistake might fall into that, he already has this stored and like guarded this idea, this rebuke that the other person got. He's able to not fall into that now.
All right, that's a good idea. Sorry, go ahead.
First half, I think that's someone who then is taking rebuke as more of like a personal attack, and not that there's a chokhmah here, as much as the second person really sees.
Right. Yeah, that's actually a good meta point about Mishlei, because I think sometimes, not here, but like I think with high school, when I taught Mishlei, like there is a certain thing where if the pasuk speaks to you, then you listen really intently. But if it's not about you, then like you kind of like tune it out. And so that person is not being shomer tochacha in the right way, meaning all ideas are relevant to you at different points. So even if it doesn't feel like it's like curing an ail that you're struggling with, then like it's worth investing that energy in it now. Like the pasuk that always comes to my mind is the pasuk about how grandparents relate to their grandchildren. I forgot that, maybe that's the first time I thought of it. I was like, why am I teaching this to teenagers? And then I realized like, oh, like there's ideas here that like are going to be relevant, not even just when they become grandparents, but like you have to, it's a different level of listening where you are, it's a funny balance. You're setting aside the fact that practically this is irrelevant to you, but listening with that same mind. I don't know. It's a skill. It's a skill. Okay, let's go to the meforshim now. So I read the Metzudas David and did not get anything like extreme from it. You tell me if he's saying something here. Yimas es Yonatz is Yimas as a Mussar. He'll despise the Mussar Mumayin l'kavla, and he'll refuse to accept it. The Shomer Hashomer belibo es hachachma yischakim besofo. Someone who guards the chachma in his mind will become wise in the end. Yeah.
He doesn't say yara.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like David's question yesterday, he said should be Bekius. So
yeah, right. Yeah. So this goes to show you, this is why we always ask, what's the definition of Mishlei jargon here? Is it using it in a technical sense or using it in a very generic sense? So here he's totally comfortable just saying, swapping Yitzchakim and Yarim,
What does Yitzchak mean?
He become wise as opposed to become cunning. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yitzchakim Besofa. The Sofa is going to be the Chiddush, I think. Yeah.
And also he's not Shomer the Tocha, he's Shomer the Chachma.
Oh, that is interesting. That is interesting. See, if this were a Rishon, I would say that maybe that's like a typo or a manuscript type thing, but I've never seen any like error in Mitzvah stuff because he's so late, That's interesting. Shomer as a chachma. I mean, it kind of reminds me of most of Moshe's idea of like extracting the kernel of idea and like saving it for a rainy day, or like what David was just saying here. Yeah.
I'm saying it's like a mix of Ariel's
Or Ariel also, yeah.
and Moshe's.
Yeah. All right. I'm fine with that. I mean, I think we covered the idea at over the course of our discussion. Okay, let's do Rבינו Yona. Yeah.
So maybe he's talking about like the perspective of the person listening. That
Yeah.
The ideal is going to look at it as like Mussar, as rebuke, and therefore he'll like refuse to accept
Oh,
that.
that's interesting.
But the person who's Shomer Tocha, he looks at it as somebody just teaching him Chachma.
Okay.
It happens to be personal. And
Yeah.
he's not offended by
Oh,
that.
that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah, that's another interesting strategy because sometimes if you have a strong emotional reaction to tochacha, you should not ignore the emotional reaction, and you should think about it and ask yourself why you had that reaction, because that'll help you to process it. But sometimes it actually is more advantageous to pretend that this tochacha is being said to someone else, and then thinking, well, what would I think of it then, so that you can extract the chachma and then apply it to yourself. It's a interesting alternative. But yeah, that's a good deal. Okay, let's do Rבינו Yona.
So is it teaching a framework?
Yes, teaching a strategy for so it's either teaching you what this person naturally does, or it's giving you a tool that you can use to approach tochacha if you have a hard time hearing it. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Evel Yonat Musravi and Rבינו Yona, but this is Rבינו Yona. Yeah, Ba Lomar comes to say Ki lo yeh marpe halashon le'ezer u'lehoyel ki im lechafetim lishmo u'lekabel hatochacha. So this is tying it to the previous pasuk, which was marpe lashon eitz chaim v'selef ba sheva b'ruach. A healing or a soft tongue is a tree of life, but corruption of it is a breaking of the spirit. So he says that a soft, I forgot if he said soft tongue. No, he said healing tongue. Yeah. He said, so healing tongue is only going to be helpful and beneficial to those who want to hear and receive the tochacha. Kamarpe eitz chaim asher to'alto la'asher yikach miperi yoveyocha. Okay, that's another mistake people make is, let's say you are very good at delivering tochacha. At the end of the day, though, it's not going to help if the person doesn't want to hear it, right? I also like the discussion in the chat, right? Like you could present the clearest ideas and break everything down, but like if they're not open to it, then you can't. A doctor. That's a Ben Franklin quote. Ben Franklin closed mind quote. No, hold on a second. Medicine quote. No.
Beyond the images.
Fasting.
Maybe it's not Ben Franklin. Maybe it's okay.
Tragic even now.
To argue with a person who has renounced the use of reason is like administering medicine to the dead. Thomas Paine. That's why I got it. Yeah, right. So like
Pain.
what?
Pain. Medicine. Whatever.
Yeah. So in other words, you can have completely effective medicine, but if you're administering it to someone who's dead, it's obviously not going to help. So too, if the person is close to hearing reason, so then it doesn't matter that it's good medicine. Okay. Usar
To give him Mussar?
Yeah. Is that Usar lates lokech lo colon? That's a weird conjugation. What is it? 9, 7? Is it? It can't be Yavaser, is it? Yoser. Okay, Yoser lates. That is weird, but okay. Still strange. Yoser. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I bet someone talks about that. Okay. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so Yoser lates lokech lo colon umochech lo rasha mumo. One who disciplines a scoffer acquires shame for himself, but one who rebukes a rasha, it is his own blemish. Okay, v'shomer tochachas yarim evil yinatz hatochachas v'yimayin lishma. So the evil rejects tochacha and refuses to hear it. Amna mishlo yinat Mussar. However, someone who does not reject Mussar v'yachbos lishma v'yate ozen lahakriv, but he desires to hear it and he inclines his ear to listen carefully. Afal pi sheyatze michlal ha'ivilim umidasam, even though he exits the category of fools and their traits. Ach lo yatze yidei chova. He's not going to be yotze, his chiyuv of receiving tochacha, until he keeps it in his heart. And he guards it to not forget it. Hu asher yecham yarim. He's the one who's going to become wise and cunning. Shmira hazos, he lishmor vlasos. This shmira is to guard and to do. Inyan shekazu tishmerun lasos, as it says in Devarim. Guard to do. Yeah, so what's the unified subject here?
I mean, he's kind of almost describing three people now, right?
Yeah,
There's the
right.
person who rejects it.
Yeah.
The person who listens to it, but is at least okay with it, but then it's like moves on with his life and doesn't think much of it or ever.
Yeah, right. He even wants to hear it, right? It sounds like he even wants to hear it. Yeah.
But then the last person is like someone who does actively think about it and goes about it in their life.
Yeah.
Thinking about it and using it.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So interesting. So just to give an example of this, I do think that there are 3 levels of learning Mishlei. Okay, that you can ignore it. Okay, meaning you can be sitting in the class and like turning off your mind, right? Then there's the level that I find most people do, which is if you get into the ideas of Mishlei, you actively listen to it and are interested in it. Okay, but you have to take that last step of how can I actually apply this to my life? And we start that by just asking the question of what's the practical application. But like, unless you play it through and actually like, the mind does something different when it reaches the level of particularity, because the emotions are only affected by particulars. The emotions are not affected by the general idea, by abstract ideas. And so you have to play it through on the practical level and look for opportunities to implement it, which partially is going to be, I mean, the memory thing is definitely a factor as well, that intellectually you do have to remember the idea in order to like be sure that you can apply it. But I think that the main emphasis here is, are you looking to be like just lishmoa or lishmor velazos? Yeah.
Does it support your middleman theory?
Yes. This definitely supports middleman theory, right? He's overtly saying that there's a middleman who listens but is not lasos. Now, where do you get this in the pasuk? Shomer, right? I'm just wondering if the yarim also he's saying implies acting on it, or if he's getting that from the shomer. He just say shmir hazos see lishmor vlasos. Yeah, right. I think he has to say that because shomer usually just means to remember. It doesn't always mean to act on it. But here he has to clarify here. Right. So the practical, but I think sometimes Rבינו Yona explains the transition of the psukim. I think even though he talks about the marpe lashon, I don't think he's connecting that to the main idea here. I think he's just explaining the segue. But the main idea is for the different levels of listening to tochacha. Yeah.
Why is this just tochacha though? Because let's say someone tells me an idea, I don't like try to implement it.
Right.
Gives me a new vocab word.
Yeah.
I don't try to use it the next 3 weeks. I'm probably
right. That's a good question. Right. So
it's lav dafka tochacha.
Yeah. So it's true lav dafka tochacha. But the question is there something unique about the tochacha that's different than just like any practical knowledge? Yeah, Ezra?
Could be that your psyche's trying to repress it.
Yeah.
Like forget about it.
Right.
You have to actively fight against
right.
it.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing also, by the way, is that finding a really good example does create an anchor point for the psyche because it allows you to envision it, and I definitely have like ideas in Mishlei that I have my go-to examples for. And that's another reason to come up with a real world example, aside from like going through the process of practically applying it to your life, is just having something that your psyche, your imagination can visualize, and that it diminishes the attempt to repress it, because if it's an example about someone else, then you can like attach to that and like, bypass the resistance.
So Nasan to David.
Yeah, exactly. Nasan to David is a great example of that, right? Is the poor man with his sheep and the rich guy taking it away. David's going to remember that. Right. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Okay. Let's do Me'iry. No, actually, hold on. Do I want to do the Me'iry? Yeah, let's do the Me'iry. He references another pasuk which you don't have, but okay. He says, this is a universal idea. And it warns about accepting or receiving rebuke. You see here is also replacing Evil with Ksil. Yisane is Yisne tochacha b'tochachas ha'av. He hates the rebuke of his father. There's 2 levels of degradation here, or of imperfection. Achas, one is sheyinatz b'tochachas afilu l'sha'ata. he rejects the tochacha even in the moment. And the other is the tochacha of his father. Shehu hamagadlo v'hamadricho. Oh, that's interesting. He's the one who raised him and guided him, v'hamalamdo lahoyo, and taught him to benefit him yos mikol adam, more than other people. So in other words, that's another thing also is like there is an irrationality to the, again, in standard father-son relationships, there's an irrationality in the way people reject their father's tochacha, because your father really wants you to do well, you know. Again, it's easier if your father's a chacham here, but you know, so like someone who had, you know, I'm sure you've had this experience where like someone gives rebuke and you suspect them of having ulterior motives. And then there are other cases where someone rebukes you and you want to push it away, but you know that they really have your best interests at heart. And that helps you to listen to them. So you should tap into that when your father gives you a rebuke.
There's another example.
Yeah.
Where like, I'm just gonna say, so basically my dad, you know, gives me a lot of suggestions on like the type of girl I should be marrying.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, yeah, but you're divorced. Like, why should I
Maybe that
listen
gives
to
him
you?
better qualification.
Like maybe.
Right? Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that is a question in people who do marriage counseling. Is it better to have a marriage counselor who has been divorced, or one who has a successful marriage? You know, like I see both arguments. Yeah. Okay. And the opposite is someone who is intelligent and strives to become cunning and wise in his Torah. Shomer hatochachas. He will keep the tochachas. I don't know why it says Torah so. V'shomer yoresh shomro le'olam. Shomer means you keep it forever. But tochachas stam yore al tochachas kol adam. Tochachas imply unqualified tochachas, meaning not tochachas aviv, implies tochacha of every person. The insark lomer
Analyze the prompt and
Whoa.
address the issues. Prompt. The
That's
opposite of someone
Google.
who is intelligent and strives to become cunning
Why
and
did
wise in his Torah.
whoa. Was it listening the whole time? And why?
It's always listening.
Yeah, and why is Google on? That was not even ChatGPT. That was not ChatGPT.
I know it's not a soulful man.
It's not a soulful man. Yeah. Yeah, that's weird.
So they're always listening.
Yeah. Okay. I don't like that. Anyway. Yeah. So tochachas stam is tochach of anybody. Vein sarch lomar b'tochachas av kiyotzeba. Right. So what is he saying here? I mean, again, this is overlap of some of what we did. I mean, he's giving us one more point, which is that think about the motive of the person who's rebuking you, and if it's someone who is in a position, it doesn't have to be father. It could be like a rebbe or like a boss at work who wants you to do well. You know, if you think about that, then that can help you to overcome this resistance. He also talks about the memory aspect of it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he has a derech nister. Yeah, before we do the derech nister, I want to do the Malbim, who you don't have. So the Malbim, again, this is just who the Malbim is. He says that every word matters, and he has a special theory about who the Avil is. Anyone remember the Meiri on the Avil?
Oh,
Superficial fool.
That's my go-to definition from Rabbi Moskowitz.
isn't he like? Isn't it like a contraction or something?
What?
Contraction.
Contraction? What do you mean?
Okay, that was 2 words or something. That
Oh, no, well, it is related to another common word. So he says it comes from the word ulai. Okay, so he translates the Avil as a skeptic. Okay, like a philosophical skeptic. Okay, so he says, let's do them all. Where is he? He says, Avil Yonat Mussar Aviv. I didn't work this through. I just flagged it. Mussar Banoi al Hayira. So Mussar is built upon fear. Shemiyaser kochos nafsho aidesh yazkir lefanav haonshim hamagim lenote miderech hachachma. That it chastises chastises, I guess, the faculties of the soul by reminding or by like causing it to recall the punishments that will befall one who deviates from the path of chachma. Tzarich lezeh hadas, and this requires knowledge. Sheyeda sheyesh mashgiach umaschir umanish v'yarem mipanav. So this requires you to know that there is, I think it's talking about a God, a mashgiach who rewards and punishes, and you should be afraid of him. Ubezeh yikach musar, and that will cause you to take musar. Kamosh kasav ohev musar ohev das. Like it says, someone who loves musar loves knowledge, or someone who loves knowledge loves musar. Seal, so he's deliberately talking about the seal, which our pasuk is not talking about. This is an interesting thing. Yodea chuke hachachma, he knows the principles of chachma. Rak shataiva goveres alav, but he's overcome with his desires. Who hagam shlo yikabel musar v'chol lo yinat oso belibo. So even though he does not accept the musar, with all of this, he does not reject it in his heart. He lule hataiva v'hayetzer hay makabel musar v'hayaholech b'chuke hachachma. Were it not for the taiva and the Yetzer, he would accept the Mussar and he would follow the principles of Chachma. So the Taiva is the thing that gets in the way. Val ha'evil shu hamistapik b'chol davar v'hu eno ohev das. The Evil, who's someone who is skeptical about or in doubt about everything, and he does not love knowledge. Hu yinat hamusar belibo. He will reject the Mussar in his heart. Eno mamin klal ba'onchei Hashem uvahashgachaso. He does not believe at all in the punishments of Hashem and his hashgacha. Tochacha is built upon the vikuach. He's using this word intentionally because it's the same shoresh, right? The demonstrations, the rational demonstrations. I know vikuach means argument, but it means like, what was it?
Disputation.
Disputation, yeah, dialectics, yeah. Shemare lo, or like we say, hochacha, right, is proof. Shemare lo al pi hasechel to'elas hachachma v'tova. That Tochacha demonstrates to him based on rationality the benefits of Chachma and its good. V'zos lo yinat ha'evil. That will not be rejected by the Evil. Kol od shehu muchan lekabel davar seichel, as long as he is disposed to accept that which is rational. Rak haber shehu or habar shu habahami. She'enu mevin davar vikuach haseichel klal. Only the boor who is animalistic and he doesn't understand any rational arguments at all. Kamosh kasav soni tochachas bar. One who hates tochacha is a bar. That's the guy who's going to reject this. Hefech min habar bapesi hu mishi nichnas belibu armimus shezem maskil havchin ben tov l'ra. The opposite of a bar and a pesi is someone who cleverness comes into his heart. That allows him to start differentiating between good and bad. Someone who guards tochacha leaves the category of ba'arus and is into the realm of orma. Okay, so he's really being technical here. Okay, so what is he saying? According to him, you have to read the pasuk who it's talking about and who it's not talking about. So it's evil davka, not ksil, and then shomer tochachas is the person who is exiting the realm of the Ba'ar. And it sounds like he's saying that the Shomer Tochachas could also be the Avil, as long as he's open to rationality. All right, so how do we put this together into a, like he's really presenting a whole system here, So there's three reasons you could reject Chachma, right? Either you reject it because of Taiva. Sorry, there's three reasons you could reject rebuke. Either because of Taiva, which means that if you can work on the taiva or get or deliver the ideas in a way where the taiva is not awakened, so then that you got a shot there. Then there is skepticism where you don't buy into the premises, okay, and that can cause you to reject it. But if you could rationally demonstrate to the person with certainty and they're open and they're capable of understanding, so then you've got an in there, okay. And then you've got the Ba'ar who can't understand anything at all. And he's saying you need to, what's the way to reach that person? I mean, he says you need our mimus, which is to distinguish between Tov and Ra. What I'm getting though is that the main idea here is you have to, I think what happens is there are times when the Mochiach or the Melamed just classifies all people who aren't receptive into one category. And what you have to do is you have to diagnose what is the obstacle to the acceptance of the rebuke here. Is it they're overcome by taiva? Is it that they are not intellectually convinced? Is it because they don't buy the premises? Or is it the fact that they can't even understand and be mavlim into l'ra?
In which case you're wasting your time. You shouldn't even.
Exactly, you're right. Or you need to see, this is what I'm questioning. He's maskil l'havkim into l'ra. I do think that there is. What was that?
Isn't that the Pesi?
Yeah, so it's funny. He threw in the Pesi here, right? And I do think, and the Pesi needs this Orma, and you could probably guess why he's saying Orma is l'havkim into l'ra, right? The Nachash is the one who introduces Tov l'ra to Adam and Chava here, So I wonder if you could cultivate. There is a level. I mean, I see this in my my younger or lower level students that they're not quite on the level of intellectual, like, like deep analysis yet, but they have a sense of like as a Torah Jew, like this stuff is good and this stuff is bad. And you can like harness that to like get them to like into the realm of the Tochacha. Like in other words, if they think that there's something that is good and you can show them that this is really bad, then even without understanding, they'll like latch onto that, and I do think that is something that you could do with the Pesi, and if they build up an understanding of the good and the bad over time, then you can like deepen it with the seichel part. Yeah. So the main idea here is you need to know where the resistance stems from, and then provide the appropriate fix. Again, it's like okay, I'll here's my go-to example here. I usually use this for Eov, but I'll bring it up here. Yeah, right. So this is so Sally says to Charlie Brown, do you think life has any meaning? And he says, well, and she says, do you think life has any meaning after you failed 9 spelling tests in a row and then your teacher hates you? He says, that's a different question, So same thing, like when a person might express resistance or question intellectually, but really they're just asking an emotional question or having an emotional complaint, So like you could talk philosophy all you want and theodicy to Sally, but she's not going, that's not the question she's asking. She's not asking an intellectual question. She's asking an emotional question or voicing an emotional complaint. And so like you need to differentiate between those people. Okay. Let's try the Derech Nister of the Meiri here. Okay. So he says, Derech Nister, Yiforash b'Mussar aviv, mash pirashim b'pasuk shma b'ni Mussar avicha, v'yarim ratzalim yeschakim v'yisnakel al shekenegdo lahachnio tachtav. So he says, the explanation of Mussar aviv is what I explained in the pasuk of Shema b'ni Mussar avicha, which we'll look at in a second. Yarim means that you become wise, and yisnakel, and you like strategize against your opponent, lahachnio tachtav, to subdue it before you. Okay, so in Mishlei 1:8, which you don't have, he first goes through the theory of the 3 parents, which Rambam Moskowitz quotes a lot, is that there's Av means either your biological father or the father who raises you, or your Rebbe who teaches you Chachma. Okay, and then he goes through a bunch of ideas there, and then he ends off with a Derech Nister. So this Derech Nister says, Efshar Amar Gamkein B'ni al Harayon. So son could mean your thought. Okay, I guess because that, okay, he'll say, Kamru Zal B'drash al Chacham Shlo Haya Maskim Im Chavero Lo Yarad B'ni Imachem. So I've never heard that idiom before, but like my son will not go down with him, meaning like my thought does not agree with you. My son is my thoughts. Okay. My mind doesn't is not on board with you on this area. Lishmoa Mussar Av hu haseichel. So he's warning you to accept the Mussar of your father, which is the seichel. Okay, father intellect, as we say. We don't say that. Okay. V'shelo yitosh. Okay, the pasuk is Shema b'ni Mussar v'chel al titosh taras imecha. So listen, my son, to the Shema Mussar v'chel, the discipline of your father, and don't reject the teaching of your mother. So he says v'shelo yitosh taras aim v'hu hachomer mikol v'kol. So your mother is your matter, which means your body and your psyche, and don't reject it means don't entirely reject it. You should utilize your physicality according to its need. Don't try to kill it. Okay, meaning don't be an ascetic. Don't be don't deny your instincts. Don't like try to like refrain from all pleasure. But use it on a need to use basis. Ki aguf kli lenefesh. The goof is a kli for the nefesh. Like I was talking about with David yesterday. Lo teshalem b'zulaso. What does that mean? I mean, the nefesh cannot be perfected except through the body, right? Meaning you need the body for your nefesh. If you use it properly, so, okay, so this is the next pasuk says in the parak says, it will be a garland of grace for your head, but livias can also mean a combination. like the name Levi, like Ulai, what does she say?
Love.
Love, what's the
I was borrowing. I thought it was like lending.
No, not there. It's
yeah,
like,
but for the name Levi though. Yeah.
but it's like vanilla, like
Yeah.
them, like they.
Yeah, like yeah, right. Or Malava Malka,
Malava.
right? Yeah, right. So it's like a company, right?
Okay.
So he's saying that it will be an accompaniment of grace for your head. And it's saying this in as an injunction that you are obligated to do this to hint that it should be a perpetual clinging. And the other one it says lashon negation, to say you shouldn't abandon it altogether. So here he's saying that you should listen to the Mussar of your intellect, but also not entirely reject your body's needs, right? And you respond to it as needed. Okay, now what does that have to do with our pasuk? So Evil Yinatz Mussar Aviv. So that means someone who rejects the dictates of their seichel, right? And the Shomer Tochachas Yarim is that you're Yischakim Yisnacha al Shekenegdo Lachnio Tachtav. So it means you act strategically about the one who's opposing you. That's going to be your Yitzhahara, to subdue it under you. So what is the idea? I mean, it is a thing that people do. They think, I mean, I just got through giving a series of Machshavah presentation to my to the high school, and I was going through atomic habit strategy at the end, and they were there's a certain astonishment of there is such a thing as life hacks. You use knowledge of psychology to improve yourself. But what people think that you can change your behavior through sheer willpower or brute forcing your way. That's not how the Yitzhahara works. You have to know how it works and then utilize it, strategically in order to get it to go along with you. And so that's a basic level mistake here, is that you would never just try to brute force your enemy who's a cunning enemy. You have to outsmart it. But when it comes to your internal enemy, people don't try to outsmart it. They just try to brute force it, That's a basic idea, at least. Why do we need the first half though? Evil Yinatz Mussar Aviv. That's the obvious part. Of course, you're going to reject the Mussar of your seichel. And he doesn't say what the avil is here, right? The avil also has to be an internal part of you, I think.
How are you defining the
to subdue it. Okay, well, let's think about that. I'll show you one more.
Is that Kovish Yitzhak or anything?
Is it Kovish as Yitzhak? I mean, that's going to be the state of being Machniya. Yeah, right. I'll show you one more thing. I've been looking for an excuse to bring in this commentary. This is the new one that I got. The Rבינו Rav Sheshes of Gerona. He's a Rishon. We don't know who he is, but he was somehow in the Rishonic era in Italy or in Gerona, wherever that was part of. And he was he quotes the Rambam, so he's several times. So he's somewhat Maimonidean apparently. That's at least how Rabbi Zucker pitched him to the chat. He explains all the pasukim in terms of the flow from one to the next. So I haven't really used him yet because the flow we've been in is different than the flow he's in, but he does say something here that's interesting. He says, Evil Yinatz Mussar Aviv, Yomar Mahal Yoel Lahochiach Al Ksil, Who Eno Cholek Al Hamusar, Mahmash Yachkar Alav Yayin Bo, Luyitav Einav. So he says, he's saying, what benefit is there to rebuke the Ksil when he does not oppose Mussar because he's analyzed it and looked into it deeply to see it, and it has turned out not good in his eyes. Meaning, it's not like he's rejecting it based on its contents, like we said before. Amnam Husone Oso Terem Yishma Oso. He hates it even before he hears it. Ki Kvar Hiskim Bedato. He's already decided in his mind. He kol davar shelo ye'ala b'machshavto oshu k'neged ratzono she'eno tov. He's already decided that anything that didn't occur to his mind or that is against his desire is not good. So I thought that was just a good way of expressing what we know about the Ksil in general, is that he's already decided that he doesn't like the Tochacha from the get-go, because he only accepts things that come from himself or that are in line with his emotions. So that, again, that's just I think this is another good idea for the one who's delivering rebuke, that if you're talking to a Ksiel, treat it as though he's already rejected it before hearing it, and then you won't even try, you know? Again, it's like we're naive when it comes to like dealing with a Ksiel. And then one more I just wanted to share just to show it to you. What? Rashishis of Gerona. What was that?
This is all we have on.
Yeah, it's commentary on Mishlei, and it's all of it except for like something near the end. Yeah. Okay, and then one last one I want to show you the Hoil Moshe, who just caught my attention. Yinatz va'ide kein nishar mi'ivalto, so he'll reject, and through that he'll remain in his folly. V'shomer tochachas aviv sheherith yamin, his father who has lived a long time, v'ra'a, and he has seen a lot of stuff. V'nasa or nisa, he has experienced. Mahu ha'olam. I think here it's being used in Nisan like an experience, like Nisionos, or he's experienced whatever. He's experienced what is in the world. Yarin Yiknelo Orma. So the thing here, he's casting the father as someone who has life experience and has seen a lot of stuff. So I thought that was an interesting angle. Yeah, David.
I was trying to say one other thing from Rojona that, or I don't know if that's exactly how you're pronouncing it, but I think one other thing is, and also if you are going to get to this person, to put it in a way as though this person already knows that what you're saying is like, make it that what you're saying is what they are already thinking, and don't frame it as I'm telling you something new. This is already your own thought.
Correct. Yeah. So that is a good strategy. That is one way you can reach the Avil, is make him, you have to incept the idea and make him think that he came up with it. I heard that is how Donald Trump's advisors had to talk to him, of somehow convince him that he's the one who came up with the idea, and then he'll go along with it, but he's not going to hear it from someone else. Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to show the variety of there are meforshim who take up the subtleties and get ideas out of those. But I like our ideas as well. So this is good. Okay. I've gone over time, so I'm not going to review it verbally. All right. Have a good day. Yeah.